Aloha. Welcome to part 2, Seeds of Truth, talking about a world without war, spirituality, science, and progress. And I have here today with me Dr. Leonard Horowitz and Sherri Kane, and we've been having a wonderful conversation, very exciting, about the future of the world. And right now it doesn't look very promising. But that's why we have to look at the solutions. What are the possibilities? We have enormous possibilities out there, but are we really aware of what is available to us? So let's start off by looking at the option of spirituality. Why don't we start with Leonard?
Well, I see the future very, very wonderful, bright, despite all of the problems that we're facing. We're going to be going through and we're going to have a healing crisis. And so how do you then prepare for the healing? It has to be, because we've been dealing with the physicality, we've got to look at spirituality.
Right.
We've got to begin to focus and question, who are we? Are we these people who are criminally insane to the point where we have to look at each other instead of as brothers and sisters, we're going to look at each other as enemies? And what is it within me that would make me think that way and actually act that out to go to war with a brother or a sister? And so I think what we're looking at is a spiritual renaissance, and I think that we're also looking at embracing the types of technologies that Nikola Tesla advanced. He, like myself, had his work suppressed. He was targeted. He was the most brilliant genius. The reason why we actually are on the air right now is because of Nikola Tesla, the energy industrialist that provided the alternating current. Our lighting is from Tesla technology. Mm-hmm. And so this whole concept is, how do you now look at the most wonderful, natural, low-cost, low-risk, sustainable technologies that could be employed with the geniuses that we have on this planet right now, whose works are being simply suppressed. Take those individuals, and again, you know, you're looking at the Trump administration, who's saying or claiming that they're now going to have a whole paradigm shift. Well, I don't see that, because essentially what we're witnessing with the Trump administration is pretty much more of the same old, same old. You're going to do the drilling, doing more of the environmental chaos and catastrophe that has been part of the problem. Mm-hmm. You have free energy. You have free energy capabilities. Nikola Tesla showed us that. And when you talk about free energy, you have to talk about spirituality, because spirituality is energy. Yes. Spirit is energy. And when you talk about spirit being energy, then you have to say, well, what is it that's creating spirit? What is it that's creating energy? And it's the same. It's called an electron. And now you get engaged in science. You look at physics. You look at the way in which physics is actually administered by a divine design or an intelligent design. If you don't even believe in God, it's intelligent. And so what is about that administers energy universally is what's called a musical mathematical matrix of creation. Creator's language is math. Math is about energy, frequency, resonance, and harmony. Now you begin to ask the right question about, how do you produce global peace and harmony instead of chaos, dissonance, pain, suffering? And now you again address the fundamental. The fundamental problem is energy. The fundamental problem is, is your spirituality going to bless mine and mine likewise bless yours? And that, to me, is the real important questions on the table right now.
Just as we have science and pseudoscience, there's also pseudo-spirituality. Many people believe that because they're meditating and they're doing yoga, that they are being spiritual. But there's something that's much deeper that we have to be willing to explore and actually break away from the crowd to be able to accomplish for ourselves. Sherri, what do you think the solution would be in finding this spirituality? Where would we have to go to find it and really embody it for ourselves?
I think meditation is really great for that. And I know that spirituality means something different to different people. I mean, we all have our connection. We all have our creator, or some of us are an atheist. They don't believe in that. But in general, we all believe in a God, or we believe in a higher power. We wish for things, we pray for things, we hope that things will be better for us. Who are we doing this to? We are praying to hopefully a divine source. We want to have that ultimate communication, that download from the creator, from the source, from Mother Nature, whoever it is that you believe in. And I think that our connections to each other are lost, as well as our connections really to our creator. I think that that's where people think, well, I have, a relationship with God, but do you really have a relationship with God? Sometimes I have to question. I think faith is really, really important. I think going into that space and really looking deep inside of ourselves. We are all consumed with self-loathing. We're all self-loathing, every one of us. Why are we self-loathing? Well, whether it's because how we were brought up, whether it's because
people say all sorts of things. You're ugly, you're fat, you're stupid,
your parents,
you can't do this,
your
you
peers,
can't do that.
Your coworkers. The television said you have to be like this, you have to act like this, you have to look like this. College says you need to do these things. I mean, what happens to us in our lives? We're lost. All of us are lost. But how do we begin to find ourselves?
And the culture itself is, instead of collaboration, it's competition.
Yeah, exactly.
So, again, the testing, the manner in which our children are reared in order to become fearful about themselves and their inadequacies, instead of Montessori schools had talked about a different paradigm and a collaborative paradigm, one that really looks at each child's giftings and blessings and capability of expressing those uniquely. Yeah. So the concept of integrating the science of peace and the behavioral science of peace, again, that's really where the rubber meets the road. It's in behavioral science, because the way we behave is criminally psychopathic. In what Sherri just mentioned about all of us being self-loathing, self-hating.
We don't love ourselves.
We
So
don't
how
love
can we
ourselves.
love
How
others?
Can you love somebody else?
How do you really love? If you can't do that, I mean, most people have a problem with loving themselves. I think that's a majority of people. There are some of us that say, yes, I do love myself. And they're able then to go on and be happy.
Not narcissistically.
Yeah.
Not being like,
not like, oh, I'm beautiful or
crazy.
this. No, I love who I am. No matter how I grew up, no matter what conditions or things I had to go through, or what journeys I had to go through to bring me here. Do you love yourself? That's the biggest question. Because if you don't love yourself, how are you going to love others? And I've learned this with people who are always lacking a relationship. They want a relationship. They want to have a husband or a wife or a partner in life. And they seem to not be able to get that. Why is that? Why is it hard for some people? And you have to ask them, do you love yourself? And I'm telling you, once they look deep inside.
And people who don't love themselves, they then project and they attract just the right partner to have a miserable life.
Yes, exactly.
And so that, again, it's like we're looking at the larger picture right now. We're facing World War III, total catastrophe. 6 billion out of 7 people are projected to die. Do we need to go through that? Apparently.
But let me give this perspective that, yes, we're desiring to be in a relationship, but perhaps because of all the negative karma that we've accumulated over lifetimes, for those who believe in reincarnation and karma, perhaps by being in that relationship with that miserable person who is actually a reflection of ours, we can come to a greater understanding about who we really are, if we can get out of the relationship. I mean, if the abuse continues to the point where we no longer have our life, well, then it's finished. But if a person could gain some awareness of how that person is actually a mirror of him or herself.
Beautiful, exactly.
Then some progress can be made rather than blaming and complaining.
Absolutely. Don Henley has a song, Get Over It. We've got to get over ourselves, our selfishness, our myopia, where even the position that one religion is better than another religion, or I call it religious exclusivity doctrine. You know, it was Jesus who said, beware of the traditions of men that make the word, the truth, to no avail to the men and women. We've got to get out of the self-limiting, unsustainable, destructive paradigm of behavioral science in which we are stuck. And that's what I say. Again, my Harvard degree is in public health, in behavioral science. And what's interesting is that, you know, if you ask the average person, even the average professor, academician, is behavioral science a soft science, or is it one of those hard sciences like physics or chemistry? Everybody's position is that, oh, behavioral science is a soft science. It's not, you know, it has pseudo-science and psychology and you can manipulate it. Well, excuse me. It's the most hardest reality science that's whacking everybody over the head, because look at what television is. That's a behavioral science weapon. That's a behavioral science tool for programming the population to do exactly what the programmer wants you to do. And so we have got to get a grip. Humanity has got to get a grip about what are we communicating? What are we permitting our children to learn in schools? What are we allowing ourselves to engage from the media?
So Sherri, what is the first step that we can take in that direction?
Well, the first step is to understand, and like he said, the behavioral science behind it. Once you understand where it's coming from, like for instance, I'll give you an example. There's a lot of propagandists out there, and they are working for an agenda, maybe for multinational corporations, maybe for big pharmaceuticals, maybe for Monsanto, and they're coming out there and they're saying, you know, you must get vaccinated. You must get your children vaccinated. And then you start to study these people. I'm giving just an example because I know this person personally. I went to school with him, and today he's pushing vaccinations and pharmaceuticals. What I remember of him from going to school with him, his parents never gave him a bath. His hair was, they never cared about him. They never cared about this kid. He was always scratching his head, and his clothes, you always wore the same clothes every day. Now, because now I know, I always felt this way, but this is a perfect example of the person today who's out there pushing these poisons, because he didn't care about himself. His parents didn't care about him. He grew up and said, why should I care if this is doing this? I'm getting paid to do this job. I don't care if those children live or die. I don't care if people live or die. I suffer tremendously. And so he's projecting his own sadness, his own reality, his own negativity and trauma on other people. Once you realize, even in a relationship, where is this person coming from? I had a relationship one time, many years, I was young, was one of my first relationships, and the guy was pretty abusive toward me. And one day I went through his photographs and I saw this woman, and you could just see her eyes. And I said, wow, this could be me. It was just the eyes. Even though when eventually I saw her, she didn't look like me as a full person, but she had my eyes. I said, who is this? He said, oh. And I looked and I said, is this your stepmother that was abusive towards you? And he said, yes. And it just came to me. I said, how dare you? He didn't, I don't think he did it intentionally. Maybe it was subconsciously, but he chose me. When he looked in my eyes, he saw this stepmother who abused him. And I never understood where the abuse was coming from. So once you understand this behavioral science and understand the background of the person it's coming from, you start to understand people more as a whole. And then you start to understand, how the media has been playing people against each other. They take a background of history and they'll say, well, because this person grew up in a family and they said, oh, these people are horrible, they're rotten. And you grow up and you believe that about these people and start to stereotype them, you start to have a problem with that group of people. Like if you grow up in a household and they said, oh, the Jews are no good, or the Muslims are no good, and you grow up...
Or the blacks are no good, or whatever's no good.
Yeah.
It's always something.
So where do you break it? How do you cut that way of being and put that in the past?
By understanding it first. Now you know it.
True.
You know where it's coming from. You have the information.
Yeah,
it's all
in
about
diagnosis
being
in medicine, diagnosis means to see through
Right.
to the root of the disorder. That's 50% of the healing. my recommendation is we start with the keikis in Hawaii, the
Right.
children, because that's the future.
Right.
And so again, to bring in
It's
the
education.
scholars, you
It's
can bring
education.
in the scholars and leave behind the economic industrialists, the profiteers, and bring in the humanitarian scholars who know what the answers are. Do that in every industry. And then you now have the capability to transform the planet.
Right. Like here in Hawaii, I have so many friends who are native Hawaiians, and they are appalled. And and nobody really realizes outside of Hawaii what they have been through and how Hawaii is under illegal occupation. It is, and how they're suffering, and how their land has been taken, and how they've been forced off their land, and how they've been abused and mistreated by who?
You are hereby noticed that the property located on the northern plateau of Mauna Kea, island of Hawaii, lawfully belongs to the Hawaiian Kingdom government, and that no permission has been granted by said government for its use or conversion. It is by the presumption of fact that the Hawaiian Kingdom continues to exist, and there is no evidence in any lawful document or treaty of cession to the contrary.
There are now thousands of protesters online, including many celebrities, and hundreds of protesters camped out on Mauna Kea at or near the construction site, who are now being arrested or warned to leave the area or face arrest.
And thus far, the protesters have had little success in stopping the building. But the information we are sharing here has profound and powerful implications for legal proceedings for citizens who have been lied to by officials about this supposedly purely scientific endeavor.
How do you get peace that way when you realize that the only way I see is give them back their sovereignty?
Everyone deserves a place
yes.
to live in peace.
Yes.
And I think that that's a reasonable and a civil orientation. Instead of always being concerned about war and having your property being stolen by someone, that whole concept, again, it goes back to the simplest understanding of the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not steal somebody else's land. You should not be jealous of somebody else, because that immediately blocks the whole spirituality of faith. Where's your faith? If you are this beautiful, magnificent, capable, worthy human being who's endowed with a spirituality that the Creator has instilled in you to enable you to create, to be a creator, a source of beauty and sustenance for your family, extended family, what makes you faithless so much that you now have to go to war to protect your property or steal something from a brother and a sister? The concept is literally foreign, and that concept of foreignness sources from the way we're educated, miseducated, and traumatized. The combination of childhood trauma, and this is why I love what Sherri's been doing with the whole issue of exposing pedophilia, child sex trafficking, human slavery. The psychopaths that do that damage a child for life.
And a lot of them were damaged as children.
And they're playing it out. So what we have to do, the solution is to stop the pattern. You've got to, and how do you do that? Multidisciplinary. You do it every way possible. You do it in the schools, you do it in the workplaces, you do it in the media. You reinforce the message over and over again. That's behavioral science, that's programming, that's conditioning, that forms habits. So if we want to have peace on earth, we simply have all the capability, we have all the knowledge. We simply need to do what's necessary that we know is available.
And you know what? Maybe we're going to have to go back to the basics. Maybe everything is going to have to get wiped out for us to really, come to a point where we can come together as brothers and sisters and say, hey, let's, do this as a community. We don't have money anymore. Let's trade. Let's grow our own food. Let's live together. Let's have, let's care about each other like everyone's a brother and sister, not just, oh, this is my family, that's your family. I don't care if your child gets sick. I'm caring about my own.
And that's
that's part of it.
That's part of the faith too.
Yeah.
To know that you're going to be taken care of. Everything is going to follow. You're going to meet the right person. You're going to suddenly, if you're hungry, the food is going to appear. It's a matter of faith, because those who live in faith and that level of spirituality, that connection to trust, have those miracles happen all the time. We
So-
experience that. I know you do too.
So if we look at the reality of how far computer technology has come and how much we are actually beyond the humans and the inhuman humans who are manipulating our lives, the computers have enormous control and influence. And if somebody, rather than pushing a button to start a nuclear war, said, we're going to shut down those satellites, then there's no way anybody could do anything.
That's true. And
Because
that's-
that is the ultimate reality. We have
That's the
become so
concern.
dependent
Yeah.
on those computers that we can barely function without them. And if we were to say for 5 days we had no access to computers, then perhaps that would be the ultimate crisis that would bring us back to the reality that now we only have each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now that's a scenario that is the subject of, Sherri and I did a book 2 years ago called Space Pearl Harbor. And what you just said is the risk that the United States intelligence community and military has right now on their desk.
That's right.
Because they have the Chinese capability right now to be able to shut down all of the satellites. And when you do that, suddenly now everything goes down. So what you're saying really is not only a doomsday issue, it's an opportunity issue too.
Yes.
And if we understand that, and if we're really engaged, if the government is truly engaged in preparedness, risk management, then the governments of the world should now be recommending exactly what Sherri just said. Start to look at your family, your community, your local lifestyle, your living situation and condition, and be self-sustaining. And that takes a whole shift of mental orientation.
Yeah.
But it's possible. I know it's possible.
To me, we're really at that point now where the governments are so suspicious of each other that to continue to provoke each other and to accuse each other is an old way of being, this war mentality that we've been suffering from for thousands of years, that if we continue in that way, then somebody will push a button, whether it's to set off an atomic bomb or to shut down those computers, and then we are lost. But that can be stopped before it happens if we have that awareness that we as individuals can do something about it.
Exactly. And you know what? There's only a handful of people in control, really, of everything. All of us, wherever nation you live in. We have friends that live in Israel. They live next to people that are Palestinians. But here in America, we think, oh, the Palestinians, every one of them hates each other. There's no, there's no peace. But that's propaganda, always.
I'm very glad to hear that you did write this book about the new Pearl Harbor, that is really something people are forgetting, because we always turn to our iPhones, our smartphones, our iPads to get the latest information on what's happening. But the day will come where all of that will shut down. And then we can only turn to each other.
Exactly.
So any last words to share with us,
Well,
Sherri?
I think that there is a chance for all of us. I think that today's show was really important just to give people insight on how we feel, that things can change for the better, and just realize that we're all brothers and sisters and that we all have to love one another. And to get along, we really have to love one another. We have to find that each of us has a beating heart, has feelings and emotions, and we have the potential. We're all born with that potential to love one another, no matter what language you speak, no matter where you're from. And that's the way I feel. You agree with that, right?
I think that I actually disagree with that a bit. I think that there are some people that are born criminally insane and that they're possessed or demonic.
But we're not talking about those people. We do know that there are a
Well,
few of them out there.
there
but
are.
in general, we see everyone as capable.
I see, generally speaking, that the criminal psychopaths have engineered society to be less than optimally blessed and productive. And I think that if we simply rationally look at our resources I think we can make a huge difference. I can see us literally shifting the entire planet.
Well, there's hope. Hope reigns supreme always. I think we've brought up some very interesting points about how we need to be treating each other. And I think we are the key to the world without war. You know, you and I individually.
Absolutely.
And most especially mothers, because now we no longer have core families, a mother, father, and a child. So it really is so important for the mother to be able very clear about the priorities for her children and for herself and for those around her. So the mother plays an extremely important role.
Huge, and that's one of the greatest challenges, is because the media has now become the mother. It's become the father. It's become the peer group. And look at the more advanced media, the high pixelation, where it's even more alive than life.
But mothers need to get more information, really. They need to study, they need to do their research, they need to look outside of the box, and they need to realize, yes, you know, this, I personally, as a, not me, but personally, a mother has to look at herself and say, I have the ability to change the planet just by doing what I'm doing, helping my child be able to go through life with a different perspective than maybe I was brought up to think like. Because, you know, as the world goes on, we all evolve, and evolution is the key. And what part of evolution is knowledge, is understanding, you know, how to live together, how to get along. You know, we all have different opinions, but how do we get along? And so I think that it's been a challenge for me at times. I think it's been a learning curve, and I think I'm getting better at it all the time, getting along with people, because, you know, there was a time in my life where I didn't see how people could get along, but I can understand now how we can get along.
We're going to have to do that.
I know,
But
we have no choice, right?
Yes. I really thank you both for being on the program, and I really appreciate these words that you have brought to us. And I think we have to look ahead to the future, that it's going to be created by you and me individually, and most importantly, by the mothers. So thank you all for listening today, and we hope to see you again soon. Aloha and thank you.